Hey, Strong Girls. I'm Molly Herford, sports journalist, ultra runner, cyclist, and author, and founder of Strong Girl Publishing.
And I'm Dr. Sasha Golish, Executive Director of Yellow Running Shoes, a researcher, engineer, elite runner, and your BFF who's breaking down the science of smashing barriers in women's sports.
Think of us as the intersection of science and culture for women and girls in sport. Each week, we'll dissect the latest headlines and cutting-edge research on female athletes.
Debunk myths about girls in sport. Talk about how hormones affect performance at every age, to the latest research in sports science around mental performance, nutrition, equipment, and so much more.
And we'll spotlight badass girls and women who are rewriting the rules of the game, sometimes literally.
Expect it to be nerdy.
And occasionally TMI.
But it will always be honest.
Whether you're a strong girl yourself or you're raising one, this show is for you. Welcome to Strong Girl Talk,
where sports science meets sisterhood.
Hello. Welcome back to Strong Girl Talk. I am here with Dr. Sasha Golish. Sasha, how are you on this snowy December day?
I'm so happy. I mean, I'm glad that I had to have a giggle fit before we started recording. It's nice to have giggle fits again.
Ever,
I don't know,
honestly.
the last time I had a giggle fit like that.
I think is the problem, because you feel great for days after you have one, but you can't just make it happen. It doesn't work like that. So I'm very happy for you.
No. And I love
it,
snow.
But
I absolutely
only partially because my skis are not in the house right now, so I don't have the app. And it's actually perfect road skiing weather where I could just step outside and just have gone for a ski, and I can't do it. So I'm a little annoyed with that, but we will be rectifying that problem shortly. So it's fine. It's fine. Actually, yeah. Although I have to admit, I don't get to do a ton of it because Peter also likes shoveling, so he beats me to it. But it's a great cross-training thing.
Yeah. Oh my God, exactly. So, okay, this will make you laugh. So I thought it was super cold out this morning. So we're recording on December 10th. And I put my big heavy jacket on and took the dog out and I was like, whoa, it is not minus 20. It's only it's the freezing mark. It's 32 Fahrenheit. And I was I immediately started sweating and my heart was sweating. Anyways, I was laughing at myself. I was like, okay. And
love
in my
that
pajama
for you.
pants.
I love that for you.
I got some heat training.
It's been a big, I'd say, month here at Strong Girl Publishing, Strong Girl Talk. Your book came out just a month ago today, I think. Or 20th. Okay, so 3 weeks. Yep. So 3 weeks ago. Actually, I was thinking
20th.
Stevie's book. That one came out a month ago today. So Power Up, our Young Women's Guide to Sports Nutrition.
Yeah.
Your Unstoppable Journal came out. Vanessa Kuhlbeck's Mirror Diaries is coming out in just 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks. It is all happening. There is just so much going on. It's been super exciting to see your journal out in the wild. People are really excited about it. People are Instagramming it. People are talking about it. We talked about it last time. It's such a game changer for just really making you actually reflect on what you're doing. I love my copy. I've had the best time with it. It's such a good, cool thing. So super exciting. And if any clubs, coaches, etc. out there are interested, we are doing bulk sales of it, both on the website or if you just get in touch with us, we'll help you figure out what you need for your crew. And actually ditto with Power Up. We've actually had a couple teams reach out and be doing getting it for all of their young women, which is so cool and so needed. So really exciting.
Having read Power Up, and actually was on Stevie's podcast. I often when I go to the fridge, I'm Stevie's judging me. She's like, no, just think, what would Stevie do? Right. So yeah. So but it's made me make better.
And I think the important thing to highlight there is the better snack decision. And we've talked about this on the show before, is not eating the chips. It's just maybe adding some protein along with those chips and thinking about, what have I done? How am I feeling my body? Is there something that, I'm missing in this snack or meal that is going to make me feel better, perform better? And, asking those questions, not thinking in terms of calorie counting or, not having something. All right.
I barely count my toes. So, okay, actually, now I know exactly what snack I'm having after. One of my favorite things to eat in the winter is so like 7 layer dip.
Yep.
So instead of using sour cream, you just take plain Greek yogurt and mix it with salsa, little hot sauce, and then go to your nacho chip heart content. Or I will say that I like a wavy Ruffles with salt. It's got like the right thickness to
It's so
hold the
funny you said that
salsa,
because
and it's
as I said a protein
saltiness
with
for
my
me that
chips,
like
I too thought of Greek yogurt because I will actually just do Greek yogurt with a little bit of salt in it. I just dip chips in that and eat that. And it's basically like sour cream and chips, and it's fantastic, but giving me more
oh, I love
protein
that.
than the sour cream. So, ooh, loving
Well, I
that.
just
Oh
think
my
I
God,
could add
at
dill to
Stevie's
that
book
too. I
launch. So
love
we did
dill
a book
personally.
launch for Power Up in Buffalo, and we brought in dill pickle pizza. So a white pie with dill pickles on it, which I thought was going to be disgusting. I was
Oh,
horrified. Delicious. Oh my gosh. I actually like
amazing.
saved the pizza place in my phone so that way when I'm driving from up here in Ontario down to New Jersey, I can literally like phone in an order and stop and pick it up. It was
Oh
so
yeah,
unreal, unreal.
love that.
And all of this talk about Power Up lends to our conversation that we had on this week's episode with Mia Lerner. So she is a high school student. She's a junior. She's the founder of Project Unlaced, which is a podcast and an initiative dedicated to educating young athletes about relative energy deficiency in sport. So REDS. Oh my gosh. Mia is amazing. That is really all I have to say on the topic. She is one of the coolest young people I have met in a very long time. Um, I'm like, I want to be like, she reminds me of me at her age, but that's
No, absolutely. I
okay,
just from the
this is
stories
true.
and
And
not
she's way
knowing
more
you're still
athletic than I was.
drinking Mountain Dew and
But
eating
what she and I have
Doritos.
in common is this like when I was 16, I started a zine because I didn't have a way of doing that. You know, we didn't have a poetry thing at our school. So we started that. Like, she's someone who definitely looks at something, says like, "Hey, this is what's missing here. I'm just gonna go do it." And then actually gets it done. And you don't see that often. People have ideas all the time, but to see someone actually run with it and I've now known Mia since I believe it was like July when we first kind of crossed paths. So, she's been at this and she'd already been working on it for quite a while. And now she's, been doing this for over a year. She's still going with it. This is not just like a flash in the pan, just a one time, like record a couple podcasts and call it good. She is so committed and so focused on this. And I think it's so cool. Yes. Yeah.
Well, Stevie was just on there. Yeah, talking about it. And then, actually, I loved, and we can put this in the show notes. Her Instagram, like talking about Stevie's book. Like I thought it was just like such a creative and inviting way to talk about some of the material, but in a
Oh,
different
hey,
way,
we
right? So
love
I'm like,
knowledge
oh, knowledge
translation here. It's what we
translation.
do.
Yeah, I just nerded out on you. It's true. I know it's really at the center of everything. But and part of it is like you listen. I'm gonna age you, right? Like we don't like we write books and like we can speak to that generation, but like when they talk to their own audiences in their way, like I learned
100%.
that way
Yeah.
too. I'm like, oh,
So
I never thought of it that way.
loved
I love it.
getting to chat with Mia. I was also on her podcast. And when I talked to her on there, I was like, this is honestly the best interview someone has done with me in I can't remember how long. And I've been interviewed by people who've been doing this professionally for decades. And she was so good. I was so impressed.
I mean, and in the interview we get into it. I think she's had really good conversations with her parents, right? I think in terms of like role modeling, like she learned how
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
ask really good
So
questions
actually,
just like
on
her
that
parents
note,
when
I
they
do
talk
think
to her.
parents of young women will really get a lot out of this episode. She talks a lot about her relationship with her parents, but I think, yeah, just hearing from a young woman who is the same age as a lot of our listeners' kids are, I think is so valuable for parents because I think she really
Yep.
encapsulates what young women are contending with, what they're feeling, what issues they're having, and she's very open and honest about it, and I love it. It was a great chat. We should get into it. All right, everyone.
Yeah,
Enjoy this
it was a great chat.
episode with Mia Lerner. back on Strong Girl Talk. Mia, welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you today.
So, you first had me on your Project Unlaced podcast almost a month ago now. And when I met you, I was just like, oh my gosh, we have to get you on Strong Girl Talk and talk about everything that you're doing, everything that, your whole background that's like led you to this place of wanting to start this podcast, talking about reds and how young athletes can hopefully learn to, if not avoid it, at least catch it in early stages here. um, let's give our audience here though some background on you. You're a junior in high school and you're doing this, and I feel like you've already like lived a whirl, like you've lived a life in sport already at this point. So give us your sport background here.
Yeah, well, first, that is so sweet. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, like, I look up to you and your platform, and I love all the things that you're doing. So I guess I can kind of bring it back to the start. Both of my parents are pretty athletic and never pushed me into a sport, but I kind of just fell into it as a way to give me a safe space, like so many other people. Like, sports was really a way for me to have a space outside of school and outside of all the other pressures of life. And then obviously to make friends. That was a huge piece that just all my other friends decided that they were going to swim. So I was like, okay, like, I guess that's what we're all going to do together. And so I started off as a swimmer and was a competitive swimmer for quite a while. And my journey with food and body image really started over COVID. I know so many other people also struggled over COVID, but I've always been a perfectionist. Like so many other athletes, I'm very much type A, and I love having control over things. I love having a schedule, having a routine, knowing what's coming for me. And I think that's what was really hard about the pandemic for me is that I didn't know when school was going to come back. I didn't know when my pools were going to come back. I couldn't see my friends. And I think that was just a really difficult time for me. And I really looked towards food and controlling my body as a way to deal with those emotions. And like so many other people, they start so innocently. Like it's really just small changes at the start of, okay, I'm going to eat a little bit healthier now. And we're just going to start eating more vegetables. And then we're going to start limiting sugar. And then before you know it, your whole life becomes around how much food you're eating, what foods you're eating, how many calories you're burning. And I think that really took me down that path. So I had just turned 11 years old, and it was the summer of 2020. And my parents were working at home too. And I think that's what's been really difficult about this for them is that I was essentially starving myself right in front of their eyes. And they didn't know anything about eating disorders, and I didn't either. So it was kind of one of those things where we knew something wasn't right, but we didn't know what was going on. And that culminated in me being hospitalized for a week. And then I started recovery, which at the start I thought was going to be as easy as, okay, we're going to eat some food, we're going to follow what my parents say. And then, in 2 weeks, I'll be back. And like, it's never happened. And I quickly realized that, like, it's not that easy. So that kind of took me in this path of, I really want to create platforms that other, especially female athletes, because I think that this problem isn't talked about enough with female athletes and it's hidden so often. And I just want to get to the point where these conversations are normalized and there isn't as much stigma so that people don't have to hit rock bottom before they realize that they need help. So that was kind of long-winded,
No, I
but
love
that's
it.
what I really hope to do.
Oh my goodness. So many things to unpack there. I mean, honestly, it's so impressive that you've managed to, in, only 5 years, really go from, coming into this, coming out of it, and, very clearly like understanding what happened. Um, so I kind of almost want to go back to when you mentioned, you didn't really realize there was a problem, or you kind of realized there was a problem, but you didn't quite know how to, articulate it. What did that look like with your parents, with your doctors? Were you back in swimming? Like, talk to us about what it actually looked like to eventually like get that help that you needed, because I think this is like a very important thing for people to hear and like understand that this is not just like a simple thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the barriers to asking for help, I feel like are so high. Like that has by far been the hardest part of my recovery was that one moment of asking for help. And I think for me, it was like it was the small signs for me. It was the fact that I realized I don't have a social life anymore. Like I can't go out with friends anymore because I'm like so hyper focused on myself and my body and how much I'm exercising and how much I'm eating. And then I just also realized that I had always had a really good relationship with my parents. And then realizing how many secrets had built up between us, the fact that I was hiding how much I was exercising and hiding how much I was eating. I think I realized like, okay, this isn't normal. I don't know what's wrong, but I clearly can't deal with this on my own because there was those moments where I was like, okay, I probably should be eating a little bit more. And I would set a goal for myself. Okay, tomorrow we're going to eat more. And like that never happened. My eating disorder was just so strong at that point. And I remember this really vividly that I went to my yearly doctor's appointment and the pediatrician, instead of like raising a red flag about my weight loss, like essentially praised me for the weight loss and how skinny I looked. And I remember that being like really impactful, even though she probably didn't think anything of it. And because it's so like normalized in our like diet culture society, and I was like, okay, I think that I'm struggling, but I'm getting praised for what I'm doing. So I guess I'm on the right track. And it was only later that I remember sitting down for dinner and like just breaking down in tears to my parents and saying, like, something is not right and I need help. And that's when my parents really pushed me to get blood work done, get an EKG. And that's when we got the call then a couple hours later of, okay, like, you need to go down to the children's hospital. Like, this is a problem that like Mia can't solve on her own. So I think it was just like these small signs that just built up. And I think one thing about an eating disorder that isn't talked about a lot is how your personality just starts to go away. Like you don't, I wasn't myself anymore. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. And I think that's been one of the beautiful things about recovery, though, is being able to see like my personality come back. And I know it's been amazing for me, but also for my parents to see their like daughter come back to life in a way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that, and I so appreciate you being so open and candid about this. And it's so interesting the two different things that you had happen with like the medical system, right? You had the pediatrician kind of casually being like, "Oh yeah, you're like really lean. This is great. Like good job." And then you're getting the call that's, no, you need to come in and like be in the hospital. And
Mhm.
this is like what is that, like days from each other? Like this is like in the same.
Yeah, in the span of like a couple weeks at most. And I think that's what's so scary, especially for female athletes, is I think so many of these early signs are just overlooked, like especially with periods and heart rates. Like we almost like glamorize these signs of like, oh yeah, I don't have my period. Like I'm in peak fitness right now, or like look at my low resting heart rate when those can really be signs of underfueling.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
oh,
I was
sorry,
like,
go ahead, Sasha.
the researcher here over is like, oh, you've now like verified and validated like all the things that we talk about. But, you know, Mia, what's really interesting and really challenging is, you're quite young. And
Mhm.
one of the things we haven't very done very well in the literature and in the research is to talk about this with young kids. Only to your point, when it gets to the point where it is so bad. I find it, I mean, listening to you talk about the diet culture and the Molly, what is the word that I am looking for? Thin privilege. What am I looking for?
Yeah,
Thin
I think thin
thin
privilege or
privilege.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
skinny privilege.
Yeah. And how that's not particularly around female athletes, right? Like I want to talk about like Alona Mahar, like let's talk about some role models. And I was reading a chapter about, how Barbie is really using role models in a positive way with like diverse bodies, but we're not seeing that at the young ages. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna make my list of studies that we need to go do over at M Park.
Yeah, and also I think the rise in social media and how young kids are getting being exposed to this stuff is really contributing to that. Like I I mean, I scroll on Instagram and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like if you're a young person and aren't aware about what you're consuming, like it's almost impossible not to fall into this trap of comparison or the feeling that you need to be disciplined about your food and how your body looks." So I think you're so right that like this is gonna be really impactful for like young people, and we definitely should like start paying more attention to it so that we can catch it earlier.
Yeah, and I mean, even the fact that we're still calling someone like Iona, like we're saying like it's a diverse body types, where we're kind of like, oh look, we have other body types, diverse though. Like,
Yeah,
so
exactly. Like,
it's
that should
different. It's
just be a
not the
given.
main. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's just a range of body types. Um,
I know, like, when did it become like, okay, everyone has to fit this mold? Like, I feel like it's just a given that, like, we have different hairstyles, we have different hair colors. Like, so why is like now a body different from that? I
mhm.
think that's been like a really interesting part of my eating disorder is looking at it like so rationally. And then when you get into those moments, it's so hard to come back to that. Like when you are faced with an Instagram post and these like little thoughts start coming up of, I want to look like that, or, you have to eat a fear food. Like, I don't want to eat that because I don't want to look this way. So I think it's so interesting how constantly throughout my recovery, I've had these two thoughts of I can look at this very rationally, but then at the same time fall into that trap so easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and that's, I was gonna say, it's funny, we're talking about social media for like younger people, and I'm like, this is also, I'm 38 and I still do the same thing on social media. So I'm afraid that it doesn't totally go away. We just need to kind of figure out how to better handle it, or get a handle on it. I did actually want to kind of also backtrack because, we mentioned this is all starting during COVID for you. And I want to bring in the Reds side of things, the athletic performance side of things. So what was the timeline like? Were you back in the pool? Were you noticing performance decline? Because I think like this is also something we don't talk about is like, you couldn't train, so the food was the stuff you could control. But then were you kind of getting back into the pool? And this is where the perfectionist stuff becomes really interesting because like you said, you're like, wait, I know I need to eat more, but also this part of my perfectionist tendency says don't do that. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So there were like those couple weeks where I wasn't in the pool, but I was like cross training, like gym workouts at home, like runs. And then I quickly like went back into the pool. And that's definitely where my eating disorder also started to like take control of that relationship too. Like swimming was no longer a safe place for me. It was no longer a place that I wanted to be. It was a place that, okay, like this is part of our regimen. This is part of what we have to do. This is part of how we earn our food. So I think that was a really difficult piece for me and has been as I've gone through recovery is my relationship with exercise. And then I think with Reds, like I very quickly saw my performance decline. I think I'm really, really glad that I was a swimmer and not a runner at that time. And I think that helped me ask for help so much earlier because in swimming, I think there's less of this. You have to be as skinny as possible to be fast, which now I'm a runner and I hear it all the time and it is very loud. So I'm really glad that I was a swimmer at that time. And I just remember like every day at practice, as soon as I would like finish a set, I would hop out because I would be freezing and I would run down to the like showers because like your body is diverting energy away. Like it's trying to conserve it as much as possible. And I saw that like I wasn't swimming as fast. And I definitely think that helped me realize like, okay, like this is clearly showing that my body is not where it should be. So I think that definitely helped me yeah, ask for help. And then also gave me a lot of motivation as I've gone through recovery of knowing that like my body is going to perform best when I give it the fuel that it needs.
Such important insights. One of the questions I have for you talking about swimming and running, like you just talked about like the thinness of running. When you were swimming, and you don't have to answer this, and did your teammates say anything to you when you came back to the pool?
Not, I mean, all my like swim friends were really supportive. Like I was at the start, I was obviously when I got out of the hospital, I was not allowed to swim. Like I was like no exercise. So it was very, very gradual of, okay, first I'm gonna go in the pool for 30 minutes with my dad and I'm gonna like, just kind of float there. And then we can go to one practice a week. So I think it was super, super gradual. And I was very open with my friends of like, I'm going through this process. And usually I would just say, like, I'm under fueling. Like, I wasn't always super open about an eating disorder because I know that, especially since I was so young, a lot of my friends didn't know what an eating disorder was or had um, different thoughts about it, like, that weren't essentially correct. Um, and I think that's one of the things that has also been kind of difficult is talking about my eating disorder with regards to athletics because I think of it as like a broken bone or like a torn muscle. And I always think about, if someone breaks their bone, we say, yeah, of course you can take rest. Like that makes sense. Like, of course. And then I think that it's really scary that that same privilege isn't given to someone with an eating disorder or other mental health diagnoses that we say like, oh, that doesn't, you can still train, like you can still push through that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Or, the flip side is like, oh, you have to be out of sport for life. Like you can't go back because like it's a bad environment for you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like you say, it was your safe space. So,
Hmm.
I guess like the big question is like, is sport still a safe, or is it now again a safe space for you, do you feel like?
Yeah, definitely. But I think my relationship has definitely gone up and down with exercise. I think taking that break was a really big important, like although it was super hard, especially during that time when I was struggling a lot mentally with the early recovery stages, I really needed that break to realize like, oh, I can live without sport. Like my life is not going to crumble. Like I am still here. Like everything is okay. So I think that was really helpful. And then I think as I transitioned to running and you start wearing your watch and you start looking at mileage, I think that's when I've also really had to learn like one, where sport is not dictated by these numbers. So I've had to do a lot of times when I realize that I'm getting too hung up on my watch, whether it's calories or steps, I just have to take it away and I give it to my mom and I say, here, like I'm just going to run with my friends. I don't need this. Like, this isn't going to help me right now. Or I think also sometimes just taking a break from running and realizing when it is getting like that compulsive exercise and just saying, okay, we're just going to strength train for a little bit. And like, that's okay. Like, we don't need to run. It's not about burning calories. So I think it's constantly checking in with myself and looking at my motivations for why I'm doing the exercise, I think is really important.
Ooh, I was gonna say Sasha can definitely speak to this because I was like, this is literally a conversation that we were having yesterday about Sasha.
It's true. And but like what you have such wisdom and maturity, and not to like not in the ageism card, but quite literally in the sport. Like you have this relative age in maturity in the mental aspect of sport. Like I struggle so much with breaking up with my watch, partly because like I want to know the time and none of my other watches can tell the time right now because all the batteries are dead. Um,
And
so
you're a mathematician engineer nerd. There is that.
yeah, okay, but I could just get a Casio. So, but for me, when you're talking about that, you talk about the data, it's the I want to be careful with the word I use right now. The I'm going to use datafication in some of the tracking apps. The data, right? And and it's not necessarily comparison to anybody else, but it's the comparison to yourself the day before. Like, oh, I took 17,000 steps yesterday, so I better take 22 today. And oh, I ran this pace or oh, I ran that pace. And it's like you actually, for me, and Molly, we talked about this yesterday exactly. Is like that's actually not the joy in it. The joy is the losing yourself in it, right? Like the flow. Like I'm in New York. I had like 30 minutes to like go into Central Park. I just actually found a whole new part of Central Park, right? I wasn't tracking anything and it was amazing. There must be like a sign on me that says like, I will take your photo. So I had 5 or 6 people be like, do you mind taking my photo? I was like, yeah, I guess so. I only have like
Wait,
20 minutes to walk, but
were
okay.
you walking in the Blue Jays jersey?
No, it's cold here.
Okay, I was gonna say because like they would just be like, "Oh, Canadian.
Yeah,
Obviously,
no,
she's gonna
I
be
didn't,
nice
you know what?
enough
I
to
didn't do
take our
myself
picture."
any favors with that. I had this on.
Oh yeah, so you absolutely people just saw you were like, "Oh, Canadian. She's gonna be nice." Yeah.
Anyways, but we don't, my point too is like we're doing a better job at talking about it around like, people like 25 and up, but we forget to talk about it with like people like you. And the whole joy of sport is what you just talked about. I'm gonna go running with my friends.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think even things like Strava have been really difficult for me. Like comparing things to myself is definitely one thing that I've struggled with, like always needing to be better. Like, okay, I ran this fast today or I had this many steps. Well, being an athlete, I'm like, well, how am I going to get better? Obviously, do more. Like that's the first thing we do. And then I think Strava has also been difficult of, okay, now other people are going to see it. So now I really need to like no pain, no gain kind of mentality of, okay, like let's do something impressive. Like this person did this. Okay, well, now I guess I need to add an extra mile to what they did. So I think I've also had to like sometimes like delete Strava too and have to like put barriers up so that I don't like scroll on it and see like, have someone else dictate what I do.
Oh, absolutely. I always say like for me, scrolling on Strava is way more dangerous than scrolling on Instagram. Because
Hmm.
Instagram, I can be like, oh, you know what? She used a filter on that. She used AI to edit that picture. But Strava, you're like, oh crap, they are faster than me. Oh no. So right there with you. Um, I do want to touch on, you mentioned, your friends who were around your age as you're going through this had some misconceptions around eating disorders. And I would actually love if you could maybe talk about a couple of those misconceptions. Because I think, again, we come at it from such a like, I didn't get into sport till I was older. We come at it from like this research lens. And I think hearing it from you, like as someone who was actually like in it at that age and dealing with friends who didn't understand what was going on is so, so helpful and valuable.
Hmm. I think really the biggest thing is that it's about food. And I've heard that so, so often of, okay, you have an eating disorder. Like, why are you in recovery for like 4 years? Like, how is that possible? Like, it doesn't take you that long to gain the weight. Like, just eat more. Like, I mean, the amount of times I've had people, I remember this vividly that me and my dad on one of our like we went into the pool to float for like 30 minutes, like a couple weeks after I got out of the hospital. And the lifeguard said to my dad that he should take me to McDonald's. And I was like, do you really need to say that? Like, is that needed? And I think that's like a huge thing that I see with my like friends, and they may not say it to me, but when I tell them, I see that they're paying more attention to what I'm eating, and they think, how can you have an eating disorder? You're eating things. Like, there you go. Like, you're recovered. Like, why is it that difficult? And then I think this other thing that's really huge is like needing to be sick enough to have an eating disorder. And I think that closely relates of like this idea that, okay, an eating disorder is someone who doesn't eat at all. They're super, super skinny. And like, you know, that's a very slim part of the people who have an eating disorder. And also that excludes everyone who's in eating disorder recovery, who wants to eat nothing, who wants to restrict, but who doesn't because they're strong and they're in recovery. And I think that's been also something that I battled myself through recovery, saying like my eating disorder will creep in and whisper to me like, "Are you sick enough? Like, I don't think your life's going to get better at this. Like, this is where we can stop. Like, we can stop recovery now." And I think it's constantly telling myself like, "No, I know that life has more to offer for me, and I know that my eating disorder is holding me back from that." So I think those are the two ones that I've felt a lot throughout my recovery.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we see that, Sasha, you might actually know some of the data on this, but I know I've definitely seen like the data on like who has an eat, like the people who have eating disorders. It's a very, very small percentage that have like the actual like low body fat and like
Mhm.
low weight that would actually be like dangerous or like have like medically dangerous kind of situations. And we do such a disservice by saying like this is what a person with an eating disorder looks like, does, etc. Like everyone's going to be different. Everyone's experience is going to be different.
Mhm.
It does sound like you have incredibly supportive parents who've been great through this. So I would love to hear your thoughts on like how parents, like how have they been supportive? Like how can other parents kind of like learn from your parents? And, if they have a young athlete in the situation, like how can they best help that athlete?
Yeah, I think one of the things that my parents say is that they're always my cheerleaders. Like I'm recovering for myself. They always reinforce the fact that like I'm not recovering for them and they never want to like put that pressure on me because I think one thing that I've struggled with in my recovery is almost this feeling that like am I going to be the perfect anorexic or am I going to be the perfect recoverer? And then there's sometimes like a pressure now like when I lose weight, my perfect recover is like, well, that's not good. And then when I gain weight, my perfect anorexiac is like, what are we doing here? So it's almost like you can't win. So I think my parents are constantly like, we are your cheerleaders. You're doing this for yourself. And I think the biggest thing is just my parents constantly like reinforcing their support. I think that's been like a huge thing, especially when your relationship with yourself and your body is constantly changing. There's days when I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love my body. Like, I love myself. Like, let's do this. And then, like, 20 minutes later, something will happen and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, I want to be anyone else right now. But I think constantly having that support of knowing that I can go to my parents and say, this food is really scary to me right now, or I'm having a really bad body image day. And I think it's one of those things where if you don't have an eating disorder, you can't exactly know those thoughts. I think that's another thing that is difficult to get across that I constantly have this little voice in my head. But my parents, even though they may not exactly understand what's going on in my brain, they're constantly understanding that I am going through something difficult and they're always behind me. So I think that's been just like really like relieving to me knowing that I'll always have them in my corner.
Oh my
Hmm.
gosh. You're like you were blessed with the gift of great parents. Um, in the research lately, with Kathy, Molly, we haven't talked about this, but you're going to be so excited that we've been talking about what does support look like. And so, Mia, I'd love if you could share a little bit more. Like you've shared a little bit, but support for me shows up in a whole bunch of different ways. I hope it's not somebody bringing you a cup of coffee in the morning when you're sitting there just kind of contemplating. Molly, yes. A hug, right? Sometimes it's someone taking the dog for a walk for me or making dinner. Talk us through if you can, what support looks like and the different ways your parents are supporting you.
Yeah, so I think I'll kind of take this question of like what my treatment has looked like and how my parents have played a role. So I came out of the hospital and I had pretty intense like treatments like with a nutritionist and therapist because you're in a very like unstable place. And I think my parents, their real job was like educating themselves. I mean, they had no idea about an eating disorder. So, I mean, they were reading books, they were reading like research papers, like they just wanted to understand what was happening. And I think that was really helpful that, again, they didn't know exactly what was in my brain, but at least they could realize that I am going through something. So I think that constant, like, Mia, we're here for you if you ever want to talk about it. And constantly giving me like, we can always connect you to someone else, to more resources. And I think constantly checking in on me was super helpful. And then I did transition to family-based therapy, which for those of you who don't know is very much like your parents are the like leaders of your recovery in a way. You step back essentially and you become a toddler is how I explain it, and your parents feed you as if you were a baby. They make all your food, they tell you what to eat, when to eat, and then like over time I got more independence until like you can eat intuitively like a normal person. So you essentially go through like the developmental stages but as like a 14-year-old. So which was definitely difficult. That caused a lot of tension in my relationship with my parents of I knew that we were on the same side, but yet it felt like they were causing so much pain to me by making me eat this stuff. And that definitely was difficult. And there were a lot of hard months where I would like talk to my therapist and I'd be like, my parents feel like my enemy right now. Like, this is really difficult. So I think always having like an outsider, my therapist has been like literally the best thing ever. Like, I still see a therapist very like even though like I'm recovered, like having a therapist is so helpful. Um, but now I think it's just again like parents constantly checking in is really helpful. Like even if it's like, how was your day? Like sometimes I don't want to answer, but just the fact that I know that they're thinking of me is like really helpful for me.
I love that. And what about like coaches, friends? Like, has anyone been particularly helpful or accidentally incredibly unhelpful? Flip side.
Yeah, there's definitely been mixed bag. I think I've had a couple friends who have been really supportive, maybe not necessarily knowing what my experience, but constantly reinforcing to me like if you ever have a bad day, like call me, text me, and like constantly reassuring me of like, you're doing amazing. And like, sometimes I'll be like, do you notice my weight gain? And they'll be like, no, of course not. And that's not why I'm your friend anyway in the first place. So I think that's always just constantly like helpful to hear those thoughts. And then there are some people, especially in the sports world, I found it where they'll say triggering things, whether it's like, I can't eat this today, or I have to go on this run because I'm having like a crumble cookie later, so I need to burn the calories. And I think they don't obviously mean it in a harmful manner, but it's so normalized in our society that no one interrupts them, no one thinks about it again. So I think that's been difficult for me in recovery and being able to take a step back and say, like, that's not my goal. And my goal, and for me, what discipline looks like is eating that stuff and forcing myself to eat that stuff because for me, that's discipline when everything else in my body doesn't want to eat that. So I think that's also been really helpful is like reframing what discipline looks like, especially when our society tells us that, discipline is like eating carrots and lettuce and like running as much as you can. I think that's been super helpful. And then in terms of coaches, I think I've been a little bit disappointed with coaches in terms of the lack of conversations. Like, it's not even that they're saying bad things or saying like bad comments around food and body image, but I think the fact that there feels like there's not a lot of support to create a um like good environment around body image and food, I think is kind of it's essentially scary because I know that it's really easy for someone to fall into the trap of underfueling or disordered eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you transitioned from swimming, where, like you say, weight is like less of a thing, into a sport where very much like, thin is in, for lack of a better phrase. So,
Mhm.
I mean, how has that been? Because I am like, why choose running, I guess, is maybe part of the question.
Yeah, I think running I kind of just like fell into it, to be honest. So, interesting story. I lived in Wisconsin and then I moved to California. So that's kind of when my transition from swimming went to running because I realized like, okay, like I'm ready for something new and I had had shoulder problems. So I was also like just getting a little bit overtrained of swimming for lack of a better word and especially like going through over exercising with it and the constant like up and down with my relationship with swimming, I felt like there was almost like too much baggage there, for lack of a better word. So I just started track here at now I live in the South Bay in California, and most of the track team just naturally transitions to cross country. So I was like, okay, instead of meeting a whole new team, like I'm just gonna transition with everyone else. So I kind of just stuck with it. But I mean, I was just having this conversation with my parents that when I go to college, I don't plan to do collegiate athletics, but I want to stay active like throughout my life. My dad still does triathlons and marathons. And I told them like I'm going back to swimming. Like I'll run here on the side, but like I need a little take a step back from the running community for a little bit.
Might I recommend cyclocross? think I said this when I was on your podcast. I'm like, we're gonna get you on the bike between like your dad being a triathlon, you're only like one
Oh, my
sport
dad
away.
loves
Like,
biking. He's a big biker. Like we have like 7 bikes in our garage for him.
there's a fantastic cyclocross series in California. I'm just saying, putting it out there.
I mean, I'll just go road riding with you to start me up. Like, I'm not going to intimidate you with like
Oh,
things you have to
no,
jump over and all those things.
I I love biking. We have my dad has like a Swift trainer.
Yeah.
Um, so like that's my go-to cross training. Like I'm a Swift girly.
Perfect. It's yeah, this is happening. It's like my evil genius is really this is all just like my like trying to lure
Recruitment.
more girls onto bikes. Yeah, it's
Okay,
all good.
researchers coming back in here for a second. Mia, I love that you've actually thought about like when I go to college, one, I don't want to be a varsity athlete, which like all I ever hear from like parents and many kids in sport is like, I want to be a varsity athlete. So like bells ringing. I love that.
Yeah, and that's been a huge like pressure reliever too. Like so much of my team is like, oh my gosh, like our coach is looking at me like they have one bad race and they're like, oh my gosh, my athletic.net is stained. I'm like, okay, like I mean like I think I've come so far because for so long I was like that too. Like when I swam and I added like point 0.1 of a second, I was like, my life is over. Like I'm gonna go cry 2 hours in my room. And now I'm like, okay, like I can run, like that's amazing. Like that's great that I can run and I'm so proud of what I can do with my body and on the like course. So I think that's like really cool is it's just a huge like pressure reliever of like this is high school sports. Like no one's getting like $1 million from this. Like, like I think taking a step back and seeing it in perspective has been like really helpful.
Well, and then too, like you've already thought about your lifetime fitness plan. So we know that when kids, youth transition from high school to college, there's a steep drop-off rate in participation in sports. It's way bigger for girls, but you're like, okay, well, like I'm not going to run as much when I go to college, but I know I want to swim. And then if there's city bikes, just go like city biking everywhere.
Yeah, no, and I think that's been like a huge part of like my recovery process and staying motivated is that like I know that, maybe your eating disorder gives you these short-term benefits, but I want to be the person who when I'm, 80 can be the person who's in the pool and who's like jogging around the neighborhood and I know that I can't do that if I don't have strong bones and if I never develop a healthy relationship with exercise. So I think that's been like really important even now, like keeping me in like a healthy place.
Oh, love it, love it. And I will add, as like two people who are a little on the older side, we're like, you have like another 25 years where you could be like at the top of professional athletics as a woman. So you have so much time. If you did decide that you wanted to like, push the limits at some point, which you don't have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I think there's
Like,
just so much pressure on young people to like succeed and like be the best at something. Like, especially as a high schooler with college admissions, I feel like everyone's like, okay, I'm gonna be the best at running, you're gonna be the best at math. Like, we're all trying to find like what are you best at? And it just becomes like a whole competition with yourself and with other people.
hmm Ooh, I gotta send you a copy of my book that came out last year, Running as Fast as We Can. It's my like high school cross country novel, and I feel like you will deeply appreciate it. Okay, so one piece of feedback that I actually got after doing the episode with you was from a young woman who made this like fantastic point that the biggest problem that we have right now is that, way too often, and this is you, right? Like young women only find this information, podcasts like yours, all this stuff kind of after the fact. So, obviously your starting project Unlaced to try to kind of move that needle, but like, how from your perspective as someone who's actually like in it right now, how can we, try to help athletes before they hit these points?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is coaches' education and coaches creating a safer environment. I'm doing a little research project right now looking at like coaches and their confidence in intervening in these situations and their knowledge on their steps. And I also did a little bit of research on looking at each state, their high school athletic associations where they have like all their information And I was comparing like how many mention lightning strikes and concussions and like heart attacks versus how many mention relative energy deficiency in sport, mental health issues, eating disorders. And I'm sure, as you can expect, only like three mentioned eating disorders and REDS and gave resources. And I think that's what's so scary is I think coaches are in such a good position to be um like mentors and say like, like this is why we need to fuel our bodies and this is why your bodies are amazing, not because of how they look, but because of what they can do. And I think that can just help athletes understand what are the signs, what are the consequences. So one of the things that I'm really pushing for is to create like more in-depth training because the training is just like there's just a lack of training essentially, and it teaches coaches, what is an eating disorder, but what does a coach do when they're confronted with it? Or how can they convey this information to their team? So another thing that I've been doing is um going to local high school teams and doing like workshops. I have one tomorrow and I did one last week too, where I talk about relative energy deficiency in sport. And I think it's really cool to have it come from someone who has gone through that experience. And I hope that, like, someone in that room realizes that, maybe they are struggling or maybe it prevents them from going down that path in the first place.
Okay, so Mia, are you working with an official researcher? And two, have you heard of the journal Frontier for Young Minds?
I my presentation was like looked over by like three medical professionals, but I'm always looking for more opportunities to collaborate and hopefully like expand how many people I can reach because I'm sure you guys know that being a young person and trying to break through in these types of environments are really difficult in creating change. So any collaborators or people who would work with me, I would love.
Well, no, it's around your research. Like Frontiers for Young Minds is a peer-reviewed research journal for 8 to 15-year-olds. So you partner with a researcher, but you write it and it's your research. And you've already started it. So I'm like, yeah, yeah. So, in six, probably let me just talk really about the peer review process. In about 18 months from now, I'll have a conversation when it's actually published. But yeah, I think, helping you, right? Like do this where now you have this peer-reviewed piece and you can do your speaking, right? And that's like, I have this credible piece of information. This isn't happening. Here's how I'm making a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think just trying to get the information out to more people is just so important because you're so right. Like if it's only the people who are actually interested in this topic who get it, and then we're missing all these people who just don't know anything about it or, don't want to take the time to know more about it. So I think that's definitely something that I think the athletic associations really need to like take a look at.
100%. I mean, Sasha, you've gone through a ton of coaching stuff. I have too. I have never had it talked about in any of the coaching courses, none of the like safe sport, first aid, nothing. It's like nowhere in whether it's like cycling or running or any of that stuff. I've never had it come up.
Well, and we're currently in the lab right now, Mia. And actually, what I was going to say is, I'd love actually, I'll send you the link so that you can participate in the education we've created. But to your point, Molly, it's not in the general education. It's your point, Mia, that you've highlighted. There's these like one-offs of like body image and reds and etc. Right? Which is great, but where we need to get it into the general education, to your point. It shouldn't be an add-on. It actually should be like the number one thing. Like first build rapport. You need to build rapport so that you can have challenging conversations. And so that when an athlete says something, you can be like, how can I spin this in a way that creates a thriving environment where we're not focused on bodies and food?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even like it's some of it is just outdated. Like the National Association for like high school athletics, like they still talk about the female triad. Like that's been gone for like years now. Like that,
15
yeah,
years.
exactly. Like we can update that a little bit, guys. Like that can't be that hard, or even just like requiring more of these materials. Like they have like an extra class that you can take on mental health. Why is that not required? Like so many people are struggling with this. Like let's require that material.
Yeah, these should not be extras. These should just be part of the coaching curriculum. And I mean, my gosh, like I don't know how your high school is, but I know up here I keep talking about like I coached cross country up here briefly, like just as like a co-coach, whatever, and realized very quickly that the coaches they're teachers, right? Like they're the
Mhm.
English teacher, the math teacher. They have zero background in any of this stuff, and their like nutrition advice is like save the Halloween candy for after provincials. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Eat the Halloween candy. You should be eating the
No, no,
Halloween candy.
no,
Please
no.
eat it.
Provincials is on Saturday. Bring it to Sasha. So eat some right after. Use it as fueling for cross country. But then could you bring me all the coffee crisps?
Here, bring
And
the
some
stuff you
for
don't.
me. And I mean, some of them are teachers, but then also some of them were collegiate athletes who were brought up in a very toxic environment where weigh-ins were still a thing. And whether they realize it or not, like that carries with them. And those thoughts are influence how they coach young athletes. Whether it's even just comments like you look fit, like, okay, so now fitness has a look to it. So, how can now I'm not worried about what my body can do for me. I'm worried about, okay, I need to make my body look like this because then I'll run like this.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Okay, we could clearly keep talking to you about this all day, but we should kind of wrap this up. But before we do, tell everyone where they can follow along with your amazing work. I feel like we're going to be seeing your name a lot in this space in years to come. But for now, tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find me at Project Unlaced. It's Project Unlaced. Yeah, on Instagram. You can just type it in. Then we also have a website at projectunlaced.org. And then I also have another nonprofit that I'm super, super excited about. It's called Booyah Teams. You can find it at Booyah Teams and at booyahteams.com. So it's just about creating a safe online platform for young athletes to talk about mental health challenges in order to reduce the stigma in the hopes that people will reach out earlier. So right now we're launching a private invite-only Discord team, and then we hope in the future that we could launch an app. So those are kind of my two little pet projects that I'm super passionate about.
Little projects. Oh my gosh. You're amazing. You're welcome on the podcast anytime. It's so fantastic talking to you, and I love everything that you're doing. So thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Strong Girl Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely head over to wherever you listen to podcasts and rate, review, and of course, subscribe so you never miss another episode. And head over to stronggirlpublishing.com to check out all of the books by Strong Girl Publishing's authors, including Molly Herford, Misha Powell, and so many more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.